Everyone, my name is Asli Guevara, and today I'll be sharing with you what it was like to create my first genogram. I wanted to mention that I have been working on developing my own family story. In fact, I've written several versions of my family story. Very recently, I was in training for the program I work with, which is called Wraparound. And wraparound is an approach to case management. And this approach is based on family systems theory. And so we work on gathering family stories at the during our first engagement with the family. So the first time we meet with them for a couple of sessions, we work on developing a family story. And in this training, they emphasize the importance of gathering the family story accurately and getting the right information. This program focuses on developing a good family story because they believe that if you had those components and if you inquire about the family's communication styles and um, birth order and what their parents worked on, and just these relationships in the past, we can then identify or have a better understanding of their own parenting style, their own communication styles. So we've been working on developing these family stories in ourselves so that we are better able to understand how to gather this information for the families we work with. And so with that said, it was my first time building or creating a genogram. Um, I am not living where my family is, but I thought I had a very good or accurate information on what my family was like or who my family was. And so this assignment was kind of like perfect timing because I happened to be back home this past weekend, just for a birthday party. Um, it was nice because it wasn't just a regular birthday party, but it was what we call a quinceañera. A quinceañera is a big celebration done for a youth or 15-year-old girl, and we believe that we must do like this big party because they're transitioning from childhood to adulthood. And so um, I consider my family to be very small. We don't share a lot with our extended family. And all of this is in regards to my mom's side of the family, or like my maternal side. And so I said, well, this is perfect timing because then I can gather additional information from what I already have. Um, I happened to interview a couple of aunts, one of my uncles, and of course my mom. And so I was able to gather a lot more information from their side of the story. So I basically had like all the names and relationships, but I didn't have any specifics. And then as far as my dad's part of the story goes, I don't have a lot of information on that. I have always kind of thought and been thought that my dad was kind of like adopted. And I said kind of because he was adopted by someone else, but he didn't go to the foster system per se. And so I already was expecting a lack of detail and information on that side of the story. Nevertheless, I was able to find some new information regarding their relationships and their thing in general. I do want to say that my family is very kept to themselves. Like we're not very well. They are. I'm already excluding myself from them, but they are not very communicative. When I was growing up, my parents weren't communicating. Like they weren't communicating between themselves, and they weren't communicating to us anything. Like we didn't get like that awkward talk about sex, or we didn't get the talk about who your grandmother is and like what happened to his family. Like we just don't share that type of stuff. In our family, I have a lot of unspoken rules. So, like, for example, my parents don't smoke or drink. They have never smoked or drank in the past. And it is almost as if my brothers and I are expected to not drink. But they never told us, like, you better not drink because this is what's going to happen, or I didn't drink because this and this and that. Like, it was something that is already expected, and it's kind of one of those unspoken rules, and we have a ton of them, a ton. But I think it's just the lack of communication. Like, these rules, like, there's nothing wrong with these rules. It's just a matter of fact that they are not communicated. Like, it's something that could easily be shared. But anyways, regardless of that, um, I felt like that's the way my parents' relationship is like. So, like, I rather not say anything. Like, we got into an argument, and time fixes it. So there is a lack of communication when it comes to, like, good things and bad things. For example, I've studied abroad in the past, and I remember, like, coming home after like 2 months and being all excited about my trip, and like the things that happened, the things that, like, just were interesting. And my parents didn't ask anything about my trip. They were like, "Oh, we're glad you're here," and that's it. Um, so that is them. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specific things I learned that I kind of didn't know, but then, through the information gathering, I was able to find out. So, one of the interesting pieces was the medical illnesses that run in my family. I kind of wasn't aware of that. I mean, I know that my grandparents were sick and it was something similar, but I didn't know that these medical illnesses ran through, like, generations. Like, my great grandparents had this, and then, it just kind of went down the road. So there are heart attacks and heart problems, as well as diabetes, running in the family on both sides of the family. So that was something new I learned. One of the most shocking things I learned was like this whole dilemma with my dad being adopted. So I always thought that I had a grandmother. She was my grandmother because I learned she was my grandmother. And so doing this genogram, well, first of all, I wasn't brave enough and I didn't ask my dad about it. Sometimes I do challenge myself and I speak up about things that don't, like, aren't usually spoken, but I wasn't able to ask him. I got the information from my mom and from my aunt, but I kind of wish I would have done it. Nevertheless, knowing that my dad and I have this weird relationship, and, like, he has this thing where, like, we don't communicate, I just thought it was harder. Like, if he hasn't spoken about it during 25 years, it's kind of like, well, I guess I won't know, but I was still curious. So maybe in the future, because I did kind of hope that I had discussed it with him. So maybe in the future I'll talk about it, just in relation to this. But anyways, I found that he his mom had a love affair, which is in my genogram depicted really nicely. Have had a love affair with a man. My dad was born, and basically my real grandma, or his biological mom, just didn't expect him and didn't take care of him, didn't acknowledge his birth. And so her mom, like my real grandma, was the one who took care of my brother. My dad never speaks of his biological mom. A couple years ago, I kind of heard that she had passed away. I wasn't told directly. I just kind of heard it, and my dad was totally disengaged with the conversation. Like, I didn't see him go out and find out, or, like, he is just totally disengaged with his mom. He recognizes the death of his mother when my grandma passed away. And so that was just interesting to know. Like, I didn't know how that relationship was. I also learned that both of my grandparents never got married. They were just living together, but there was really nothing like church related or legally married. They were just, living together, and they had like this little arrangement. What else? And then, so I also kind of found that this communication thing that is really big for me has been like generationally brought to us. And so I feel like my parents, or my mom, particularly my mom's side, has tried to get together like with her family and have this sense of like togetherness, but it has not worked out. And I think it's because of all the missing pieces that there is in the family. I feel like they are trying to like remend or like make this communication piece better, but there's just too many unknown pieces that somebody kind of tries to jump in and say, I think it was this and that, and others are like, no, 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 that couldn't be it. I think that's what's been happening, and it's a shame. But lately, we have been getting together a little more often, and that's nice. I'm gonna pull up a picture of like this weekend that was nice because everyone was there, and it was like one of the times where, like, one of the very few times that we're actually like together and everyone's like sharing, and it was just nice to see that, and know that, although we're not there all the time, we're still family, and we still care for each other, and we still, kind of love each other. But anyways, in my paper, I explained that I have been kind of like deviating from my family. There's a lot of things that I didn't like about my family, particularly my dad has had several affairs like with other women. Making this genogram was made me wonder, like, this is something I have always kind of like wondered, if my dad ever had other children with other women. So making this genogram, I feel like so tempted to like ask him, because I've been open up with him about it. And well, that's a whole nother story. But I just kind of felt like, what if there's someone else? So yeah, but I didn't do it. You see, I was a coward. But um, I I lost track. You can see that's me getting personal. But so what was I talking about? I was sharing in my paper that I didn't like a lot of things about my family, particularly my mom's and my dad's relationship has been like these love affairs, and then like this poor communication. There I could say there is some emotional abuse, and it's things that have been, just reinforced through life. So whenever I went to college, my parents were very adamant of me staying like home and staying close to home, and I just had like this university I wanted to go to. It took me like literally gathering statistics and showing them to my parents and saying this is why I should go to this university, to like literally have them let me or give me permission and give me their blessing to go to another university. And I think this was like the best experience of my life. I know it sounds cliche, those college years, but I think that it was much more than moving away from home. This was when like I could really feel this process of differentiation in myself. In many ways, I felt like I was detaching from my family, and like this kind of fusion was happening where I was just trying to find my own identity. And after my undergrad, or well, before I skip to that, there was a period in undergrad that I was getting ready to graduate, and I happened to go to counseling. And I went to counseling because I didn't know what my plans were going to be after I graduated. And counseling came to be around becoming assertive, developing that sense of self, and differentiating between or within my family. And I didn't know then, but the counselor was easy to, or was relatively quick to like find out what was the reason behind like what my plans were going to be. And it was just this trying to find the meaning between what my family wants me to be, what my family expects me to be, and who I really want to be. So, with that said, I think that I have been able to differentiate in a healthy way, just kind of finding that balance between who my family is and who I want to be. And I am not in any ways saying I want to change or I wish I could have another family or have just any other different relationship. I think that everything about my past and about them makes me who I am. Even like the interactions my grandparents and my great grandparents have, I think that all of it comes together to develop who I am. And so this professional journey in some sense has led for me to find this healthy ways of differentiating myself and like withstanding that fusion that was happening between my family. Lastly, a couple of points just like in faith. Although I still continue to identify with their same faith, I have other practices. I don't want to say theirs are worse, mine are better, but I feel like I have been just more in touch with God, and our relationship is kind of like different from like their relationship with God. Additionally, I recently got married, and something interesting that I found by developing or with through the process of developing this was that my husband's family is almost the exact opposite as my family. Like they have such a sense of togetherness. They value communication. Everyone kind of knows what's happening within each other. He talks to their parents, every day, to his parents every day, and I feel like I like the sense that I married him, but I also became part of another family. And my family is unique and I love them to that, but I can also see how I was maybe searching up for that communication, for that kind of like yeah, like togetherness and those missing pieces that I have in my family. And well, overall, I think this was a nice experience. I thought I had a good understanding of what my family is and where my sense of identity comes from. But I think it just gave a better explanation of who or what I have become and how that plays a role, how their relationships and their ways of doing things plays a role on who I am right now. And that's it. Thank you.